the record reflect? This matter is no longer waiting for anyone's opinion, anyone's permission, or a negotiated understanding. The time for diplomatic buffering and strategic hesitation has expired. The facts have solidified through sequence, contradiction analysis, respondent conduct, and a messy panic of post-exposure revisions. The issue is no longer whether the conduct occurred. To treat this as a debate is to jump right back into the spin machine. The issue now is attachment of responsibility, attachment to consequence, attachment of liability directly to the originating source. The record has stopped taking notes and has begun collecting the debt. The respondent had every opportunity to correct the record before the evidence locked into place. They didn't use that time for correction. They used it for damage control, revision, narrative management, selective framing, atmospheric shielding. They treated mercy as an extension of the deadline to manipulate the room. The truth does not require the consent of the entity that tried to bury it. The matter now moves forward with or without them. This is a sentence, not as a metaphor, a theatrical performance, or a rhetorical flourish. Sentence as enforced placement, the formal reassignment of displaced consequence right back to the originating source. The weight must land exactly where it was manufactured. For a long time, the witness absorbed the instability while the respondent redistributed the confusion to save their own social skin. The witness functioned as an unauthorized, uncompensated shock absorber for a collapsing house. That transfer ends right here. Opening case file 15, entry of judgment.
Failure of the construct.
The central mechanism here was engineered distortion. It was never a simple misunderstanding, because a misunderstanding implies two people looking for clarity who just lost their way. The respondent set up the witness as the unstable variable while operating from an entirely fractured narrative posture. The strategy was architectural. Build a house of cards, point at the witness's breath, and blame them for the wind. It worked temporarily through sheer repetition, delay, and social insulation. They relied on exhaustion as strategy. If you can't disprove reality, just make it too expensive for the witness to defend. The witness was repeatedly forced to defend observable facts while the respondent kept moving through contradictions, ambiguity, and revision behavior. The goal was a procedural inversion. Make the witness look reactive. Make the respondent look measured. Make contradiction look like interpretation instead of evidence. The goal was to ensure the witness ran out of breath before the respondent ran out of lies. But the construct failed the moment comparison entered the room. The respondent's story required continuous adjustment just to stay alive once the timeline was laid out. Every new look required a brand new script. The witness's account did not require any modification at all. Granted, does not need to adjust its posture when the light changes. The room originally used to stage uncertainty around the witness now functions as evidentiary storage for respondent conduct. Every shadow cast by the respondent has frozen into a permanent silhouette on the wall. Every attempt to redirect the narrative returned carrying identifiable sequence markers, contradiction points, and behavioral attachments. The respondent did not destroy the witness. The respondent documented themselves. The structure built for concealment ultimately converted into archive material. The machinery of the lie became so heavy that the foundation swallowed it whole.
Return of displaced consequence.
The file now enters inventory review regarding transferred harm. The respondent set the fire and handed the match to the bystander. Confusion originating from the respondent conduct was externally assigned unto the reporting source, while the respondent retained atmospheric protection and social flexibility. Observable sequence was repeatedly challenged, reframed, and minimized to exhaust the witness's confidence. The objective wasn't clarification. It was survivability through confusion saturation. Flood the room with enough smoke so that no one can locate the exit or the arsonist. They even attempted to restructure the reputation through external narrative placement, influencing social interpretation before the evidence could stabilize. It was a preemptive strike against the math of the timeline. The damage attached disproportionately to the witness while the respondent temporarily kept their freedom inside the room. The witness bled while the respondent negotiated the aesthetic of the wound. That transfer no longer stands. The record now takes over the maintenance responsibility previously forced onto the witness. The witness is relieved of the obligation to keep the lights on in a room full of people pretending to be blind. Liability now reattaches to the originating source. The counterfeit currency of the respondent's narrative is hereby confiscated. The burden has officially returned to the source.
Your time at this table is over.
Termination of denial authority.
The respondent's defenses no longer function. I didn't mean it does not alter the structural outcome. Intent is completely irrelevant when the architecture is already weeping from damage. I don't remember does not override a documented sequence. Amnesia is a luxury the record does not extend to the author of the record. Everyone was emotional, does not redistribute responsibility. A shared atmosphere does not imply shared guilt. They tried to drown the facts in a collective puddle of human fertility. The comparative review failed to support that posture. The evidentiary pattern, the contradiction pattern, the reputational impact, and the preservation behavior, all roads lead back to the exact same point of origin. The record touched the respondent's version and the structural failure followed immediately. The respondent is no longer operating as a narrative authority inside this matter. You are no longer the speaker. You are the specimen under the lens. Future denial will not alter findings. Future performance will not alter sequence. Denial no longer functions as a rebuttal. Denial now functions as residue generated after evidentiary collapse. It is simply the sound of the debris hitting the floor after the building has already dropped. Your version did not survive sequence comparison, contradiction review, or archive consolidation. Denial authority is therefore removed from the matter.
What in the devil's name?
Attachment of the room.
They're darker than we are.
The matter now addresses the surrounding structure that permitted the false version to survive way beyond the point of reasonable doubt. The respondent didn't preserve this narrative alone. A lie cannot stay upright without an audience willing to lean against it. The environment assisted through hesitation, delay, selective scrutiny, social cushioning, and withheld corroboration. The witness operated under intense pressure while the respondent operated under atmospheric protection. The room requested additional proof from the witness while extending immense interpretive generosity towards the respondent. The witness was required to be an impeccable monument of accuracy, while the respondent was allowed to be a fluid mess of convenience. That delay materially intensified the harm. The structure remained functional through distributed participation. One participant minimized. One participant redirected. One participant avoided involvement. One participant stayed silent to preserve social comfort. They played a symphony of passivity, and the witness was drowned out by the volume of their silence. No individual actor carried the entire mechanism. It survived because responsibility fragmented across the environment. To stand neutral between the hammer and the glass is to choose the hammer. The atmosphere sustained the delay. The delay intensified the damage. The room is therefore entered into record accordingly.
Entry of exhibits.
We are no longer debating possibilities. We're inventorying the ruins. Exhibit A enters as a contradiction under comparative review. Statements delivered with certainty later reappeared in altered form once external scrutiny increased. The truth does not morph depending on how many people are watching. Exhibit B enters as revision activity. Language framed as definitive was later repositioned as a misunderstanding or emotional confusion. The second sequence comparison weakened respondent survivability. The definitions changed the moment the consequences arrived. Exhibit C enters as deletion and concealment behavior. Relevant material disappeared, shifted, or became inaccessible the moment the matter advanced beyond a controllable posture. You only erase the tracks when you realize someone is tracing the path. Exhibit D enters as retaliatory conduct. Once the witness maintained their reporting posture despite the pressure, the respondent escalated through distancing, selective framing, and indirect punishment designed to exhaust the source. The punishment was structural, cold, and intentional. Exhibit E enters as social installation activity. Third-party relationships were operationalized to save respondent positioning while increasing instability around the witness. They traded social capital for narrative protection. Exhibit F enters as a systemic atmospheric failure. Onlookers waited to see who would win before they admitted what they saw, forcing the witness to be flawless to be believed, while the respondent merely had to exist to be protected. Exhibit G enters as narrative laundering through the atmosphere. The false version survived through implication, silence, hesitation, and strategic ambiguity. It was a ghost that everyone in the room agreed to house. This was not a series of bad days. It was an architecture of containment. The exhibits are entered accordingly.
Finding of conscious preservation.
The forensic signature of this file completely rules out clumsy human error. The preservation pattern demonstrates an active awareness of exposure risk. The sequence establishes clear recognition of inconsistency and evidentiary vulnerability. You do not shift your weight unless you feel the floor giving way beneath you. The cleanup behavior further establishes awareness. Concealment activity increased proportionately to exposure progression. Revision intensity increased proportionately to corroboration proximity. The panic was calculated. The adjustments were precise, tactical retreats. They kept the pieces fragmented because they knew the whole picture was an indictment. They distributed different versions of the story depending on how much the person in front of them already knew. The file therefore rejects the innocence through confusion posture. The contradiction was managed. The distortion was preserved. The witness was operationally burdened to buy time for a compromised narrative. A maze this intricate is never built by accident.
Finding of collateral damage.
The originating distortion did not remain isolated to words. It bled right into the floorboards of the environment. To climb a mountain while fighting off an assault is a double expenditure of life force. The witness sustained reputational obstruction, social fragmentation, relationship interference, psychological fatigue, and defensive hypervigilance. The damage was compounded by delay. Every hour the room spent hesitating was an hour the witness spent under fire. Opportunities narrowed. Trust destabilized. The landscape was salted. You cannot build a life when you are constantly forced to fortify the perimeter against ghosts. The damage was not theoretical. It was visceral, architectural, and systemic. The file rejects the characterization of this matter as a simple miscommunication or mutual confusion. There is nothing mutual about an execution. The respondent generated the distortion. The atmosphere extended its life, and the witness absorbed the impact. Collateral damage is entered as an aggravating extension of the respondent's conduct.
Release of the witness.
The witness is formally discharged from unsupported evidentiary maintenance responsibilities. The witness is stripped of the burden of proving the horizon exists to people who profit from the dark. No further explanatory obligation remains attached to you. The record now recognizes the baseline reality of what was endured across the life cycle of this matter. The respondent did not merely engage in a narrative disagreement. They executed a sustained campaign of reputational demolition and life structure destabilization. They attempted to systematically dismantle a human life simply because of their own originating conduct detonating in their face. The respondent chose to treat the witness as a combatant, failing to realize the witness was never battling them. The witness was simply residing in observable truth, refusing to retreat or return to a toxic, compromised environment. Throughout this extended cycle, the witness operated under a level of exposure that would have pancaked an ordinary structure. They maintained absolute reported consistency while the respondent deployed every weapon in the inventory: strategic exhaustion, social isolation, and narrative laundering. The witness held the line when the line was entirely unmapped. But the truth no longer relies exclusively upon witness stamina to remain standing. The archive will hold the weight from this moment onward. The boomerangs have completed their trajectory, and they have struck the hand that threw them. The human shield has stepped aside. Let the fallout land where it belongs. The witness should never have had to survive this alone. You now exit procedural burden posture. The respondent now retains sole ownership of the remaining structural collapse. The burden has found its owner again.
Entry of verdict.
The file did not arrive here quickly. The witness did not arrive here untouched. This matter survived through exhaustion, delay, fragmentation, and silence. But the survival of distortion is not the same thing as structural integrity. A tumor can survive for years, but it never becomes a vital organ. The record remained standing longer than the construct that attempted to bury it. Let there be no soft edges around the finality of this text. The respondent is hereby found materially responsible for the generation, preservation, and redistribution of a knowingly compromised narrative structure resulting in deep reputational, psychological, relational, and social harm. The room is found complicit through protective delay, selective scrutiny, and passive preservation of preventable harm. The witness is found credible, supported, corroborated, procedurally stabilized, and formally discharged from further burden of proof. The witness is a monument that outlasted the siege. The respondent's version is declared a dead zone of information, an untrustworthy ledger permanently disqualified from the archive. There is no court of appeals for a truth that has already solidified into concrete. The verdict is returned accordingly.
Imposition of sentence.
Sentence is now imposed. The respondent is hereby sentenced to absolute narrative insolvency. Your credit line of public sympathy, strategic confusion, and interpretive benefit of doubt is permanently canceled. You are stripped of the authority to write your own history, explain away your conduct, or negotiate the terms of your reputation. From this moment forward, every defensive statement you utter will automatically process not as defense, but as a documented continuation of the offense. The escape hatches are officially wielded shut. The respondent is sentenced to carry the full, unmitigated weight of the psychological and social wreckage they manufactured. You are condemned to live inside the exact structure you built, stripped of the atmospheric shielding and social insulation that previously protected you from the weather. The community comfort you use as a fortress is hereby dismantled. The room is sentenced to aggravated liability for passive preservation, for choosing comfort over clarity, for standing neutral between the hammer and the glass. The environment is stripped of its right to claim innocence. The silence you use to protect your social positioning is entered into the ledger as active participation in the harm. You will now carry the reputational stain of the arsonist you chose to house. The witness is granted a permanent order of release and total kinetic disconnection. The witness is formally stripped of the obligation to respond, to explain, to litigate, or to acknowledge the existence of the respondent or the complicit room. You are completely discharged from the burning building. You are awarded total ownership of your energy, your timeline, and your peace, backed by the full weight of the stabilized archive. The penalty is non-negotiable. The execution is immediate. The sentence remains attached independent of your corroboration, your remorse, or your acceptance. The borders have closed. The asset is frozen. The sentence is locked. The findings remain entered. The verdict stands. The sentence remains attached.
The final order.
Let the record reflect. The matter has exited interpretation. There will be no further procedural extension, no further evidentiary negotiation, No further allocation of energy towards distortion management, reputation or rehabilitation, or atmospheric interference. The file is stabilized. The findings are fixed. The attachment is complete. The witness is no longer standing inside the blast radius, attempting to translate smoke into proof for people committed to misunderstanding the fire. That assignment is permanently terminated. The respondent now retains sole custody of the structure they created. Every contradiction, every revision, every transferred wound, every delayed consequence. Nothing remains suspended anymore. What was hidden attached itself to sequence. What was prolonged attached itself to damage. What was displaced returned directly to source. The atmosphere can no longer absorb impact on the respondent's behalf. The cushioning has collapsed. The installation has failed. The room no longer possesses the authority to dilute what the record has already finalized. This matter is no longer operating inside social posture. It now exists as permanent archive condition. The witness walks forward without procedural burden. The respondent remains behind with the full gravitational weight of the structure they attempted to escape. The separation is absolute. No further response is required. No further defense is required. No further participation is required. The ruling stands on sequence alone. Judgment entered accordingly. Sentence attached without suspension. The matter is formally closed. I am Wolfie. Welcome to the resistance.